Wait.
I'm so excited to be starting Tuesday Talk again. I really am.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be nice.
It's gonna be nice.
Oh, whatever it is, I gotta shake it off.
Okay. It looks like it just hits you all of a sudden.
Yeah,
A
it's like a sleepy bug.
sleepy bug. Yes. Let me see. I'm adding you guys to the stage just for a brief, quick convo. Please communicate with me via Facebook Messenger. Sean, can you hear me? And Cheryl, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So communicate with me on Facebook Messenger. And we are live right now. So I want you guys to stay on for a second as we begin. Nope, Sean, stay on as we begin our Tuesday talk for this season. I just want to give a shout out to Sean Richardson and Sinette Cheryl Lee. A lot of times they are in the background, and you guys don't know who's back there, and it's these two. Sen Lee, another member of the Shrine of Ma'at, is also in the background. He had to step away for a second, but we do have a bit of a production team that's been with me this whole time. So I just want to shout them out and say I couldn't do it without them. All right. So thank you so much. There we go. There's some light. There we go. All right, guys. So you guys can go backstage, and we're gonna get going a little bit with our Tuesday talk. Thank you. I don't know why they silent. We be talking up a storm. I didn't get that.
You talking
Say
about
that
me?
again. Oh my God. Now Siri wants to join in. A joint is a break of natural origin in a layer or body of rock that lacks visible or measurable movement parallel to the surface of the goodness. Fracture. Thank you, Siri. Shall I continue? No, don't continue. Oh my goodness. All right, there we go. I had to shut Siri up because we don't need her on this, right? I mean, dag. Okay, so welcome to our third season of Tuesday Talk. Tuesday Talk is something that I'm super proud of. A lot of people have asked me, where is Tuesday Talk? When is Tuesday Talk coming back? And the reason that we had a little bit of a delay, I was in a car accident and I had a concussion and blah, blah, blah. I don't even like talking about it because I'm past a certain point in recovery, and then just thinking about everything, all the details that goes into Tuesday Talk was something that I just was not able to do at the time. But here I am. I am back, and I am excited to start our next season. As you hang in there with me and come back and be a part of the Tuesday Talk family, you will notice that there are some changes. The first change that I have to acknowledge is the other seasons that I did Tuesday Talk, I was in priesthood training. Well, we have completed priesthood training, and I am a full-fledged priestess. And part of what the elevation was to have a different title. And the title that I have now is Hamet Inter Sashat Medit Nejemnes Hetepka. So the name that was given to me before was Abut Sashat Medit Nejemnes Hetepka. So the whole entire name, I always had that. But the title has changed to Hemet Natur. And Hemet Natur means it's the feminine version of divine servant. And I will tell you, there's definitely lots of service when you are a priestess. And I enjoy serving the community. I hope that you guys can feel that love and that you are getting something and growing. not just as a Kemetic practitioner or another traditional religion practitioner, another traditional African traditional religion practitioner, but that you're growing as a person, a human being. That is something that I hope this is really helping you in that arena. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest for today. Imo Odo, as some of you have probably seen him on other platforms. I found him, well, I hate using the word found. It makes me feel Christopher Columbus-y. And I
I
most
was
certainly haven't.
discovered.
I discovered him, you guys. He was so irrelevant until he met me, and I gave him all his relevance. That's sarcasm. It's a little colonial sarcasm. No, so I saw him on another show, and I was like, wow, this young brother is really on it. And in like 50 years, 40, 30 years, he's going to be one of our great scholars. And hopefully I'm one of the
Thank
people
you.
who, yeah, it's definitely true. When we prepare for Tuesday Talk, we do have extensive conversations. And I just want to make sure that this is a good fit for Tuesday Talk and that, we have a vibe and we can talk and bring the people what they need. And when we talk, we just be talking. We be on the phone for hours. And it's like, we have stuff to do with our lives. We have to get off the phone. So this brother knows a whole lot. So welcome. I'd like everyone to welcome him to Tuesday Talk in the chat. Let me know where you're from. Let me know how long you've been following Tuesday Talk, and let's just jump right on in it. So I like to always start off my Tuesday talks by letting everybody know how absolutely brilliant my guests are. So, can you give us a little bit of background on your undergraduate education, like where you went to undergrad and how you got started and what it is that you're doing?
Yeah, so I guess to formally introduce myself again, my name is Imo Odo. I'm currently at all but dissertation, so I'm almost done with my PhD at Temple University. I'm pursuing my PhD, my doctorate in Africology and African American Studies. So I began, um, I guess, my undergraduate studies as a regular, well, I don't want to say regular, just American history major, U.S. history. That was what I started as, and then I moved into. They had different concentrations available, so I started to focus on what they called third world history at the time. So third world history. So I studied a lot of the Cold War, and that was really my first engagement with African history. Really dealing with the 50s and the 60s and
Mm-hmm.
the flag independence periods, the earliest periods in the wake of World War II. So I started with that, and when I went to grad school, I took well, before I went to grad school, I took a lot of elective classes in African American studies. So I took classes, on everything: black cinema, the
Mm-hmm.
family, black family, manhood, black woman, um, world history class. In the history department, I took any class that I could about Africa, and
Uh-huh.
it was hard. So
Mm.
I figured out a way, but I also studied a lot of other world civilizations. So my background is definitely as a historian, and but when I went into grad school in Africana Studies and Black Studies and Africology, it kind of expanded beyond just history because the it's more about us, you know, um, reconnecting and
Mm-hmm.
re-immersing ourselves and reclaiming and restoring what was lost. So it's more immersive than just a conversation about history.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of grew out of the discipline of history as I grew into Africology. So from there, my personal politics are one thing, and then I have my professional um stances on things because you have to navigate certain institutions in order to stay employed, unless you're doing something great, and entrepreneurial and independent,
Right.
which is
Right.
an
Which pays the
aspiration
bills.
of mine. But we all get there in our own time.
Right. Definitely.
So
So I wanna take a step back a little bit. Did you go to undergrad at Temple as well?
yeah. So I started at Montclair State, and then I transferred to Temple, uh,
Undergrad.
and finished at Temple, and then I went home for a year, went back to grad school at Temple.
Okay.
So I was at
Okay,
Montclair
cool.
for 3 years. Then I finished my undergrad two years or so, and then I don't know, rough timelines.
Okay, that's great. What sparked your interest in like learning about yourself so much so that you studied it? I mean, I think that like we all have a certain level of interest in ourselves because there's a significant gap,
Mm.
especially before social media and Instagram and all of that. So, what sparked that interest enough for you to want to pursue your PhD?
Well, um, my initial dive into our history really came as a result of being starved or deprived.
Uh huh.
You're in this sea of whiteness in college sometimes,
Uh-huh.
where you're reading all of this history and you're looking for yourself in what you're reading,
Right.
and when you can't find it, you sometimes it takes a while for you to ultimately find people who are they have a lot of substance to share. They have things to tell you. They have resources to point you
Right.
toward. They have
Hmm.
these kinds of things. So I didn't really have those kinds of things until I got to Temple. But when I was at Montclair State, I did take um the they have black psychology classes. So I was reading, John Hope Franklin and that kind of stuff at Montclair. I actually did read Wade Nobles, um, but like I didn't really take from me. I read Malcolm X when I was at Montclair State, and if I'm being honest, when it really kind of I guess I guess when Pan Africanism became, I guess, somewhat of a part of my personality at Montclair, I got jumped by the police. When I was a teenager.
You
So
got
that's
jumped by the police?
yeah. When I was a teenager. So when you're kind of like learning, you're in transition, you're learning, and then something like
Right.
that happens. Like I didn't end up going to jail. That's why I ended up leaving Montclair State. It was the Montclair
Um,
police people. So, but I'm still indignant about it. I really don't like these goofy babysitters with flashlights who whatever
I did
state
not know
agents.
that. In all of our conversations, that never came up.
No, I
Wow.
mean, I tell people that I know. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
pretty candid about it. I mean, it's something that happened 2013, so it's about 11, 10 years ago. So
Hmm.
so I think at that point I was really kind of coming out of high school. I was like 19. I was like coming out of high school.
Right.
I was really learning about what the world actually was beyond.
Class.
I come from a suburban town in New Jersey. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we're like, it ain't the hood at all, but it is hood adjacent. It's not.
Not hood adjacent. Not
Well,
hood adjacent.
New Jersey ain't that big, so
Right. Yeah. It's Jersey. So you turn a corner,
I don't
boom.
I don't ever pretend to be from the hood. I'm not.
Right, right,
Mm.
right. I was born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut, and it's like that too. Like
Yeah,
you live in Hartford, you're not that far from a hood somewhere. I mean, there's gentrification even in Hartford. At least they're laying the foundation for it. But Hartford is like Detroit, so we'll see. But we digress. So Before we jump into tonight's topic, I think it's important for the viewers to understand what you're studying in
Mm.
your PhD program. And for those of you who might not know, PhD stands for Doctor of Philosophy, which means you've studied philosophy or the philosophy of said subject just as long as a medical doctor. So you know what you're talking about when you have a PhD in something. And so he's getting his PhD in Africology and African American Studies from Temple University. It's the best. It's the best Africology and African American Studies program in the country. Period. Hands
Well,
down.
I would say the challenge of Black Studies is that Black Studies is a field. So there are very few universities that have complete they have that provide resources for complete departments or programs.
Hmm.
So Temple has a complete department and programs, so they have resources that other schools don't have. So you have prolific scholars in other places, but they're not centralized the way that Temple the way that they have been at Temple historically. Just as a result of but the kind of scholars that have been at Temple have been so prolific, so they've influenced so many scholars in so many other places as
Right.
well. So
Right.
I try, as much as I appreciate my time at Temple, I also understand, because there's only been really one standout PhD in Africology. Like, some of the conversations about African or Afrocentric paradigm, Afrocentricity, these kinds of things, they become kind of like centered around Temple, and I really think that the idea is more profound than just what happened at Temple. Like, I think what's going on at Temple is very important. I think a lot more people should know about it, but I think the Afrocentric idea is um, more profound.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, the actual work itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. All righty. Great. So let's get into tonight's topic. What is the topic for the evening, kind sir?
Yeah, so I think I wanted to start into the year. I think pretty easy going, pretty generic, but I think in a way that we can kind of go deep, at our own discretion. So I wanted to talk about the significance of ancient Africa to Black people today. Why do we need to talk about such distant moments in African history, distant events in African history? Why are we talking about 5,000 years ago? Why do we need to even talk about Kemet? Is Kemet 5,000 years ago? Well, does it mean the same thing today?
Right.
Is are we being romantic when we study ancient African civilization? Are we romanticizing our past and our ancestors, or do they do does our relationship to our ancient past have contemporary implications
Right.
and ideological implications, you know for the way that we actually do things, um not just discourse, but also what we do, how,
Right.
functionally, what, practically.
Right. So just to jump in true modern Kemetic form, it isn't just that we read it and study it and think about it, but we actually want to put it into practice and live it and do it. And if you've been with Tuesday Talk, you understand that when I'm bringing you guests, it's so that you can use the information and do something with it immediately. So how do we make ancient Kemet functional and livable and its relevance, in January 2024 on the Gregorian calendar, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you led with Gregorian calendar, right?
Hmm.
and because I think when you use the word Gregorian, I think you're situating
Hmm.
a perspective or a worldview that is relative to the time that we find ourselves in.
That's
So
correct.
so Gregorian refers to Rome.
Hmm.
So from the entry point into Africa that we are calculating 2000 and uh two 2024 years later uh in the African world, from that point until now, is a point in time that was introduced to Africa by foreigners.
Hmm.
So I think that's an important point for us to understand, because when we're trying to look at the world from our African perspective, we should know that time does not begin in some of the marks or the markers when we begin time. So we should know that chronology is often one of the more foundational aspects of knowing our story. You
Right,
know,
right.
it's not always about the numbers, it's about the order of things, it's about the sequence, it's about what came first or
Hmm.
what came
Hmm.
second, or what happened in context, what was going on in the times. So chronology is more important than numbers, let's say, because sometimes people get caught up in the numbers and the dates in terms of factoids about certain information,
Uh-huh.
and they miss the value of what it is that we're reflecting upon our past for. So the reason we're reflecting upon our past is because we're trying to understand what is the relationship between what our ancestors have experienced, what our forebearers and elders have experienced,
Hmm.
and what we're experiencing today, and how is it that they have survived, and how is it and what have they left for us to figure out how to survive in the present moment and going forward into the future.
Right,
So
right.
that's what the meta nature is all about. That's what the language divine speech means. It means um divine speech means basically a, um intergenerational transmission. That's what it means.
Hmm.
It means basically ancestral voices. That's what it means. It
Hmm.
means uh from the supreme divine force in the universe to the intermediary divinities that represent aspects of that divine force, to the ancestral spirits that that we venerate and continue to celebrate,
Hmm.
to 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 the living, those living among us as well. So
Right,
now we're
right.
talking about like elders, and we're talking about your parents, then you talk about, you know, where you are, then you talk about your children, and then you talk about the yet unborn. And the yet
Right,
unborn are the people who are on the same plane as the ancestral realm.
right,
So if you understand the cycle of life, then what you understand is the people who had come first are the people who sit at the beginning of time or beyond time. That's those are what you would call your netter or your divinities, or however you want to call them, or
hmm.
they're divinities that sit beyond time, at the beginning of time, your primordial ancestors.
So
You
let me ask you this question. In talking about the nurture, and that was a really great explanation of that. Can you just? I'm going to ask you two questions based upon what you just said. Can you explain to people who might not know what is a nurture and what is the
know,
nurture? So that's the first question. And then how do we access this nurture and the nurture in a functional way, so that we can connect
mm,
our ancient African spirituality to today, to 2024?
Yeah. So the way I understand uh uh the netter are basically the same way that other groups of Africans refer to what we might call, I don't like calling them gods and goddesses. I'd rather call them natural forces. Let's let's
Right.
let's go with natural forces or principles. You
Mm-hmm.
see, so principles in nature,
Right, right. That's what I
things that,
use.
yeah. So they're eternal forces that exist at all times. So if you understand that, that's why I was, the reason I was saying that they are energy, yeah,
Right,
cosmic energy, but everything that exists is comprised of some form of cosmic energy.
right.
And so these different personalities, divine personalities, are, they represent different energy configurations or
Gi-
different, like we said, natural forces.
Give us an example. I want the person who's
Yeah.
just tuning
So
in to be like, what? What is this? What is an
so
energy?
I mean, it sounds like a fancy way of saying something metaphysical, but really what it is like one natural force can be water.
Right,
So you might say um Oshun is the mother of all of the divinities. So if she's the mother of all of the divinities, she's also the ocean. So she's the ocean because all life comes from the ocean. So she's the mother of all of the other divinities because she's the mother of all the other life forces. So what I mean is the ocean becomes both a symbol, like a metaphor, I guess we'll
hmm,
say, but it's also a principle.
right.
So it had so the ocean, and as a natural force, the way the ocean behaves is also the way Oshun behaves.
Now, when
You
you
see,
say
so
ocean,
that,
you mean Yema, you mean Yemaya, right?
well, sure. I mean, so this is why when you're dealing with, you have different personalities
Right.
that represent similar natural forces.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have one that represents the ocean, another that represents the river, another that represents the rain, and then you know what? If we go to Kemet, they have uh one that represents moisture.
Oh, wow.
You may
So they have one.
that's Tefnut. So
Oh,
so
yeah.
but if we go to a different African culture,
Mm-hmm.
you may have water that has manifested in a different way. So you may have
Right.
geysers, you may have springs, like hot springs in where
Mm-hmm.
you live. So you may have a divinity that has that name because it represents the essence or the nature of that configuration in nature. So these different forces in nature tend to have personalities, and that's or and because they have life cycles. So that's why they're given names as though they are life forms, the same
Right.
way we are, because they're life forms that exist on another plane. So now we're dealing with the way African people think of the cosmos, the universe,
Mm-hmm.
the way that we understand spirits to live alongside of us.
And it's important to recognize what he just said. He said, understanding it from our perspective, and from an African perspective, the way that we see cosmology, the way that we see the cosmos. And so, you know, my question was kind of a trick question when I was like, do you mean it, yeah, Maya? Because there are
Yeah,
different different personalities in the mythologies that explain the natural forces of nature. And so
yeah,
that's why you see these stories or mythologies, retold in different parts of different African cultures. Because ultimately, the generic or overarching African culture is the same enough, so that even though the customs and traditions in different locations might be different, it's to do the same thing
Well,
in
and
terms of how we connect with the divine. I just have one question I want to read, and I hope I got this right. Takara Negas, her question is, so Neteru is the Kemetiu understanding of Orisha. That's her question. Can
yeah,
you?
I mean, Yoruba people come from the big water. They come from the Nile.
Right.
So if you understand that, like if we think, and that's why I said chronology is about order of events, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we
Mm-hmm.
think about when Kemet collapsed, when you had foreign Asian and European invaders, um, they pushed those African people further into southern, central, and west Africa. So you have the same. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you think about the formation of pre-dynastic Kemet, you have all these groups of African people coming from different parts of Africa and coming together in the Nile Valley. But when foreigners invade and destroy African civilization in the Nile Valley, those
Mm-hmm.
African people are dispersed throughout the rest of the African continent. So
Right.
so Africa isn't as um uh it's not as separate and balkanized as a map with borders on it may suggest.
What does balkanize mean?
It means divided. It means cut up, carved up.
Segmented and right.
Yeah. So and that's why that's what I wanted to get to about the word Kemet. Um,
Let's get in it.
because the term Kemet, it means the land of black people, or the black land, or I mean some. And if you look at the term in the language, the Medu Neter, the iconographs, the images, the sorry, my hands off screen, the circular, the circular glyph, for simple word, the glyph, NIWT. I don't know how you would say it. Nuit.
And
That
I probably that
if
works.
you look at it as part of, it's in Kemet, it means community or nation. So it refers to a group of people. It doesn't only refer to the ground under your feet. I mean, the ground,
Mm-hmm.
the land is an integral part of any nation. But this particular determinative in the language refers to a group of people. So it means the land of black people. Kemet. It means the land of black people. So it is a particular nation, and you have other nations in Africa that are distinct nations from Kemet. But Kemet itself refers to the land of black people. So you can have the same name in other languages, land of black people. So you have people, that's what, like, if you look at like Zanzibar, like keeping it in East Africa, like Zanj was a word that was used by the Persians when for black people when they were capturing Africans in the East African slave trade. So the word Zanj in Tanzania, or Azania, the word Zan means black. So you can have the land of black people, Azania, the land of black people. It's the same thing. So you have people. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to get it wrong. I mean, Yoruba, they might say a BB man. No, that's Twi. A BB is Twi. So a BB to me, like a BB man, that's Twi. So that's like the land of black people, and I'm sure you have other ways to describe the land of black people, because if you think about these different nations, they're existing as a part of the same civilization.
That's
So
right.
so people don't understand that. So when you go to Africa, people are speaking 5 and 6 and 7 different languages and living in the same society. So the thing is, there's 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 more organic unity that's already in motion, that's already happening in Africa, than people are willing to recognize.
Right.
So
Right.
so 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 it's all about your orientation, your value system.
Mm-hmm.
What do you place value on? What do you place the light on, and what do you place in the dark? You
Right.
know, what is it that you see that's important for African people, and what do you see that's, you know, irrelevant for African people? So
Part of that is also having a bit of, a little bit of knowledge on
yeah.
general African culture so that a person can be astute enough to know what they're looking at. You know, I know when I was searching for Black God, which is what I called it at the time, which wasn't necessarily wrong, but I used terms from my understanding. I knew there was something out there, but because I didn't have like enough knowledge to know what an ankh was, I was looking at it and didn't know what it was. I thought it was like a certain kind of cross, and I wasn't sure. So in order for people to really see like our progress as African people, there's got to be some knowledge enough for them to recognize, what they're looking at,
Well,
and then not be scared of it.
this is, and the thing about knowledge is like a seed or a plant or a root.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So a lot of the time people, they look at the leaves, they look at the flowers, you know, they look at the fruit, but they don't look at the tree. They don't look at the trunk. They don't look at the roots. You know, they don't look at where it's coming from.
Right,
They
right.
don't look at what it's growing out of. So a lot of the time, uh, when we're talking about knowledge, a lot of the time we're talking about epistemology. That's the theory of knowledge, right?
Thank you.
Or the way of thinking, right? The way of coming to know something. That's epistemology.
Like the way of learning. Can you say
Uh,
that, or is that too far?
you can say that. I
Mm.
think learning entails some other things besides just knowing. But yeah, yeah, you're yeah,
That's
basically.
good. That's basic. Okay. Uh-huh.
So basically, the reason I point to theory of knowledge, epistemology, is because that's a fancy way of saying that uh what your ideas are going to be rooted in a worldview or a language. You see,
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of the time when we get into nomenclature and names and terminology and that kind of stuff, that's when we need to be we need to understand epistemology, because the history of where the word comes from is going to tell you what the word means, and how the word is to be used, and the
Right.
function and use of the word.
Right.
So a lot of the time people think that they can escape the essence of terminology and what words are and what their function has been in history and what it continues to
What
be.
it continues to be, despite
And
people's best effort to change it.
yeah, so people, exactly. So you know, people want to unroot some of the words, and you know that's the whole thing with the trans people, the postmoderns. They don't like roots. They don't like ground. They don't like nature. They don't like anything that's gonna lock them in to a truth. To them, truth has to be fluid, speculative, and relative. It can't be anything that's foundational based, or what they might call essential, you know. But you know, I don't want to get into that. You know, you know, I do the PhD thing because you know we do I'm a theoretician, you know, so I do deal with different theories and paradigms. But you know, but I think it's important for us to understand that instead of dealing with theories and paradigms, I think for the common person, it's better to deal with languages. I think it's better for you to deal with the culture that you're trying to think about, because I think there's too many black studies people and Negro philosophers that they
Not
bend and
Negro,
stretch everything African until it's not African
until it's
anymore.
not African. I'm going to jump in and say this.
Yeah.
You would spend some time on the Medu Neter. For those who might not know, the Medu Neter is it means divine words, right?
Mm.
And language is the verbal expression of culture.
Yeah.
So that's my own little definition. That's my non-PhD having
Yeah, it's a good
definition.
one.
It's like, you like that? Okay. So, that's why if you like, let's say you know Spanish, you'll have some of your Dominicans will say, well, when you use this word, it means this. And you'll have some Mexicans who'll say, when you use this word, it means that. It's the same word, but because, Dominican culture and Mexican culture, it's both Latino, but there's a difference, right? So the expression of their own individual culture might be different with a word or two, expression or two of stuff or whatever, like that. So it's important to study ancient African languages because the culture of the people is embedded in the words.
The
You can't
language is the
escape.
memory.
Right. Thank you. There you go. That's what it is. You cannot escape cultural relevance when you are using words. Like there's slang that we all use. It's just a dialect that I select when I hang. That's what special ed said. And that just means when you're with your friends, a certain group of people that share a similar understanding of a certain culture, you speak a certain way and everybody understands it. And then on Instagram, you could see a new word for the first time, ain't never seen it before, but because it's rooted in culture, you know what that person is talking about.
Well, and this is why I was gonna say that. And I see somebody in the chat said Nefer. I was gonna say it's Nefer. I let's use her name. Let's use the name Nefertiti, right? The name Nefertiti means the beautiful one has come again, or the beautiful one has returned.
Oh wow. I
That's
did
what her
not
name
know
means.
that.
So Nefer
Means
refers
beautiful.
to the aesthetic ideal, right?
Hmm.
The beauty. So the same way we have Medu Necher, we have Medu Nefer, where we instead of divine speech, you have eloquent speech, right?
Mm,
Or beautiful speech. So Medu Nefer. So Nefer is the aesthetic ideal, but I think that's why when you're thinking about the aesthetic of African culture, you can always recognize it in any given time. You're always going to be able to identify the African principle because it's essentially going to be the same. It's always going to stick
hmm
out as African. You're going to know it's African on its face.
hmm
But some things you're not going to know they're African on their face. It's in their deep structure that they're African. So that's why, like, a lot of the time we have to study certain things, because people, like, damn, where's my book? I ain't got it. My mom got me a book. She thought it was funny. She got it for Kwanzaa. She got me the book. It's called Historically Black Phrases. That's what it's called.
Okay,
Uh,
that's a good book. Oh, I know he did not just freeze.
can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Okay, I can hear you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the book's called Historically Black Phrases, and uh, I'll just say it's for somebody who I read a lot about Ebonics. So
Hmm.
while I thought the book was like it was like a cute attempt, it was kind of like you could tell it was just somebody being sassy, imitating, like, I don't know, like their mom or something. Like it wasn't like a systematic study
Right,
of
right,
like
right.
Ebonics. But the thing about Ebonics means black sounds.
Mm,
So phonetics, the sounds of the language, of the African language, persist in the way that we speak,
hmm
even if
That's a
we're
fact.
using European vocabulary. That's what Ebonics is all about. But a lot of the time, people don't understand why is it that uh, uh, a word or a term or a language that you've never known or never heard before can be embedded in your way of speaking. It's knowledge that's been passed down that you're not conscious of. It's something that you've inherited from maybe your parents or from your grandparents or from the people in your family,
Hmm.
from generations, maybe two, three, four, five generations. People talk about epic memory. a lot of the time the language is the memory. That's what people don't understand. The language is the memory. The more of your own language that you know, oftentimes the more familiar you are with the history of your own culture and where
Mm-hmm.
and how this language came to be, and how what the significance of this word and the significance of that word and what this means, and oh, that's what that means, and oh, that's how that works. The language is the memory. So that's important. So when we're studying the Medu Neter and Kemet, that's the memory of our ancestors. That's what the language is. So when we're studying ancient Africa, you know, people think that, oh, you can never go back. You know, people say that, oh, you can never go back. It's 5,000 years ago. You can never go back. But you start realizing, because I noticed some people in your audience, they have names. They have Kemetic names.
Mm-hmm.
Like the language becomes alive when when we come back into contact with our own language from our own ancestors.
That's right.
That's literally how the language comes alive. So that's what the Europeans have done with Greek and Rome, with Greece and Rome. That's what the alphabetic script is. It gave structure to the way that they write. They used an ancient language as the basis for all of their Caucasian languages.
Latin.
Yeah, exactly. Latin. See,
I
so
took I had to take I took 4 years of Latin at prep school
yeah,
so that I could understand the grammar structure of English. And I told my mom I want to learn Spanish. She's like, okay, well, Latin will help with that. And at the time, I wanted to be a doctor, and so it's the structure like a base for European languages, and so just like what he said, it's a defunct language that no one speaks, but the
it's a deep
structure of it is
structure.
still
It's a
there.
it's a deep structure. It's a way of thinking.
Right.
It's what Marimba Ani, she breaks down the worldview into three different pieces: the seed,
Mhm.
the structure, and the behavior. I believe it is. So I think the seed is a silly. The structure is the Udamawar Udamaroho and the Udamawazo. I know those are the three. I might not have them correct. I need to refer back to the book. But but basically she breaks down how there's those are the three main structures of culture. So I mean the place of a lot of ideas and the way people think, people don't always understand that if you don't deal with the ideas initial creation, that initial seed in whatever culture that it was originally born within,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't deal with that, then you're not going to deal sufficiently with what the limits or the capacity of an idea actually is, because the structure of the idea, anything that is created is part and parcel of its creator.
Period.
Anything that's created is of its creator.
That's right.
So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about children or we're talking about ideas or we're talking about inventions. It doesn't matter. Inventions or creations will always reflect who created them, and that's a principle that our African ancestors really held steadfast to in a lot of important ways. You know, I mean, that's what the whole Kepler beetle is. But they do it in more than just the Nile Valley civilization. It's clear in other African cultures as well. But I don't know. I feel like I'm spraying around. I'm getting excited. So
No,
what are we
no,
talking?
I think it's really important to understand what he's talking about. There are a couple points that were brought out here, and one is the structure of a language is is deeply rooted in the history of the culture. Okay, when I studied Latin by force in middle school and high school, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th grade, one of the things that stayed with me was there are five cases: nominative, genitive, dative, ablative, accusative, or accusative ablative. And what that helped you do was look at a sentence and break down every single word. Every single word went in one of those cases, and prepositional phrases when in that case, indirect objects, direct objects, and there you go. And it was really like a plug and play type of a structure. So you had cases, you had different declensions, you had feminine, you have masculine, and you have neuter. Those are the three different declensions in Latin. And with that, you have you're able to know if something is plural, and you're also able to know which case it's in, which means you know what that word does in that sentence. That's Latin. I haven't taken Latin since, I ain't even gonna tell you, but I was 12, 13, 14, and 15. And I still remember it. Why? Because in writing papers and writing English, writing my papers in high school and college and beyond in English, I knew I had to use that structure. Plus, my mom taught English, so anyway, that's a tangent. But the point is, the structure reflected that culture. Those
Listen,
the way that they broke up a sentence into different sections was a reflection of that culture. So if we have Imo who was saying, we talked about the Medu Neter. That is how the Medu Neter is functional. To that's one of the ways, not the only, one of the ways that the Medu Neter is functional in today's society and beneficial for Black Americans, because you're learning the history of African thought pre-invasion. That's like at the core of who we are as African people. And that information is embedded in that language.
yeah, and I also wanted to add about the term kemet. I just got back from Senegal uh 5 months ago, 5 months ago, I'm losing count, 5 6 months ago, 6 months ago. Yeah, so I got back in June, 6 months ago. So basically, um uh when I was in Senegal, one of the things that I appreciated over there was they have they have Pan Africanism is not radical in Senegal. It's in the newspaper. It's like every day, very common. Like people talking about Pan Africanism. So I think one of the things that we kind of get into, that from an Afrocentric perspective, one of the things that we find limitations with the terminology of Pan Africanism is it doesn't have an organic root in the African language as a terminology.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is people have radically varied definitions of Pan Africanism. So one of the ways that people have begin to adjust in Africa against some of this confusion in the Pan Africanist movement is they've begun to call themselves the Kemet movement,
Okay.
and they've begun to call themselves the Kemet movement because it's a terminology in an African language that is relevant to the conditions that Black people exist within in Africa right now. So they know that all of these different groups of people in Africa know that Africa is a singular, or it's one civilization. They know that they're fighting to remove many of these colonial borders so that they can create um, the ideas of African superstate. The same way that Marcus Garvey talked of a Negro superstate, or Sheikh Anta Diop, who's also very important, who talked about a federated state of Black Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people in Africa are very excited, or very serious about moving towards you know being a confederation, being I mean, especially in the formerly French terrorized African
Mm.
countries, like Burkina Faso, and you know, I mean, I was just in Senegal, Niger, Mali, Gabon. That there's a bunch of there's others, but a lot, but there's some major players that are right now trying to reconfigure what the economies of their countries look like, by consolidating and working together. So that's good news for now. Like I like some of the things that we're seeing. Let's hope that they make um greater strides towards you know um making control over their
That's right.
African destinies more permanent. Let's hope. Let's see where they go. And let's keep the support on, especially with things deteriorating with the whole Israeli thing, because they looking to export that problem into Africa right now. So that's another problem too. But
I
um,
was talking with somebody else about that tonight who wants to go to Egypt but doesn't want to deal with what could possibly happen with the unrest between those two countries. So yeah, that's always something that we should keep our eye on. So
they
uh,
calling people in Egypt. I saw when uh I remember something stupid. Kevin Hart, he gave $1 million to the guy, the Black Sands Entertainment dude, and in Egypt they was calling him a terrorist or something because he was saying that the people who built the pyramids was black, and that's terrorist discourse to them Arabs in Egypt. But what I realized is how fragile politically what's going on in Egypt is, especially what's going on in Israel. I mean, I guess, you know how like you read history, you don't read the end of the book. I didn't
I didn't
realize
read
Gamal
much of
Nasser was
it.
assassinated by
You said what?
Israel. I
You
didn't
know who?
realize I didn't realize Gamal Nasser,
Hmm.
the the Arab leader who declared independence of Egypt from Britain in the 50s.
Hmm.
When he nationalized the Suez Canal, the Israelis assassinated him.
Oh,
I didn't know
okay.
that. Like I was doing my research. I was like, how did I miss that one? Like,
Right. Well, for some of us, we've never even encountered this information. I have heard that person's name before, but I didn't know. I
no, but
didn't know
that's
what you
relevant.
just
But
told us.
that's relevant. Those are the geopolitics of the region. So like a
Right.
lot of the time, like when we go back to Africa, sometimes we want to be touristas. We want to be Americanas in Africa, but sometimes there's real shit going on over there. Like, and you coming over there trying to be in the middle of it, like you on vacation. It's like, no, it's like if you come to Africa, you should be aware of what's going on so you can, I mean, in my opinion,
Plan
seriously engage your
accordingly.
people. I mean, if you want to support your people, support your people. Like for real, support your people. Like
Right.
if sometimes, I understand we like to have fun, but sometimes like I think it's good to actually know what's going on the ground. Like when we were in Senegal, like it was great. Like I loved being over there, but they were forcing the president to stay in power. So it was like it was like gas stations blowing up. Like they was like
While you were there?
yeah, like we was walking down the street, we was like yo.
Oh, wow. Well, one of the things that I did want to
I mean,
discuss
it's not.
was,
But I also want to say, I also
mhm,
know they wasn't after me.
right,
Like I
right,
was
right,
cool.
right.
Like it wasn't like I didn't feel like I was unsafe. I was just like, yeah, like I ain't trying to be in the middle of this. I'm going inside.
Right, let's go someplace else.
Yeah.
I did want to discuss the Pan-Africanism in Senegal because when we had our conversation, uh, before into prep, he mentioned that before we segue to Senegal, I want all of you to ask some questions and to let me know that you're understanding what's going on because Tuesday Talk is so that you can take this information and immediately use it. Immediately use it. Tuesday Talk is centered around Kemetic spirituality, African spirituality, and Pan Africanism. Pan Africanism is a very broad term, and I'm using it in the way that how it was described and a Kemet movement in the sense that Africans and those of us dispersed by enslavement need to unify and live an a pre-invasion African based life. Okay, so before we move on to Senegal, I want to see some pictures and some questions in the chat. I have a friend who he had gone. He said if I ever get a chance to go to Senegal, I should go. He's an Afro Latino Puerto Rican, and he's an Alpha too, and he talked about Senegal, and ever since, and I respect his opinion, and ever since he said that, I was like, I want my next trip to be to Senegal. I just got back from Colombia. I went to Cartagena, Colombia. My childhood best friend assembled all of the wonderful ladies in her life, and we all went to Senegal. We all went to Colombia. It was 10 of us. And what I have found interesting is I'm Black American on both sides. All four of my grandparents are Black American. When I'm out in these world streets, people think I'm from all over the diaspora.
They thought I was Ebo when I was over there.
I mean, I can see that.
And it was like, it was funny because I was like, we're in Senegal and I meet this kid. He's a Yoruba kid. He's from Nigeria. And his friend thinks I'm Jamaican, because I speak English. And then the other guy thought I was Igbo because I was light skinned. They
Maybe
don't
you're light
know.
skinned Jamaican. Maybe you
But
are light skinned Jamaican.
I got a kick out of it. I thought it was funny. I guess I'm an Igbo today, y'all.
You know what? And
Like,
I find it interesting. There was this Colombian dude when we were in Colombia. So we're talking. I speak a little Spanish, but not enough to be fooling somebody. And he was like, "You're not Colombian?" I said, "No, I'm not Colombian." We had this conversation in Spanish, and he's like, "You know, you're not Colombian?" I said, "No." I said, I'm Black American. I'm from Los Estados Unidos. And he just didn't believe me, and my mom and I get such a kick out of it because it's happened for like 20 something years at this point, like half my life.
people know
And
better than me what I am.
I
People
know, right? They
they
be
do
so
that.
sure you aren't what you say you are. It's, to me, it's just really kind of proof of how worldwide and African our features vary so much that I could be Colombian. You could be Igbo. We both could be Puerto Rican. We could be whatever because our features and like our Africanness is that broad. So I don't know. I just think that when I hear that, to me, it kind of touches on my Pan African heartstrings.
Well,
Because it's
and I think a lot of the time we operate from the assumption that, like, somehow we, I don't want to say we popped out the ground where we are,
what do you mean?
but people
Oh,
think that way.
mm-hmm.
People think like they have a short memory. So what happens, and then even in Africa, people act as though a DNA test is gonna tell them who their people are. You act like people don't move around in Africa. So I mean, if people live, I mean, the same way, within a generation, uh, I'll give you an example. My friend, he's Jamaican. His mother's Jamaican. His father is Panamanian, but his father is Jamaican because his father's father moved from Jamaica to build the canal. So they're all Africans. You see
Right.
what I mean?
Exactly.
But like within a generation, you can, conceivably think of yourself as a different nationality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think a lot of the time people don't understand, you know, like, nationality is based on, in my opinion, nationality begins with race. Like, different nations based on race. Like, different nations have different races, but you can have many nations within one race. So you can have competing or conflicting or unified political interests between different African nations. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think a lot of us are sophisticated enough sometimes when it comes to that kind of question. Sometimes we just think, oh, well, all black people either got to get along or all black people got to be part of one thing. It doesn't have to be that. I mean,
It's
you can
right.
have
It doesn't
many
work that way.
nations. You could have
Hmm.
so a lot of the times when people are talking about Pan-Africanism, I like to say Pan-African nationalism, because Pan-Africanism just means many different groups of us. Pan-African nationalism means each one of us needs a nation. What nation do you
Hmm.
belong to?
Or
Belong
each
to a
one of
black
them
nation.
to right. Each
Yeah.
one of us together belongs to that Black nation. And so when people think I'm from all over the African diaspora, that's kind of how I feel when I hear that. And and the latest iteration of that is Colombia. Hemnetcher Shep Sankamen made a very good point. This is a point that I have made during enslavement, chattel slavery, chattel enslavement. We were on purpose mixed up from different African nations, tribes, families, villages. And so we are African mutts, is how I see it. And his comment is way more poetic than what I just said. The comment is diasporic Africans are unique in that we are all mixed together versus living in a genetically homogenous environment.
Well, think about it like this. I mean, we talk about ancient African civilizations. Do you think that they were diverse, or do you think they were monolithic? In which regards? They were monolithic racially, but ethnically they were diverse. So so when you're talking about a liberated African country, or a free black nation, or a free black country, you're talking about a Pan-African nation. You're talking about many ethnic groups. When the
Mhm.
Haitians freed themselves from Euro-Christian slavery, they formed a new nation based on many African families
That's
from
right.
different parts of Africa.
Hmm.
So a lot of the time, the idea of the barriers between ethnic groups, the linguistic barriers and all that kind of stuff is easily overcome. People speak more than one language. You just gotta you have to get on the same page in the same language. That's what it is. That's why
So
Kiswahili is a big deal in South Africa, East Africa, and Pan African communities. Kiswahili, there's other African languages as well, but that's one that many people have agreed that will
is the
work.
language we should all learn.
Exactly. It will
Hmm.
it works functionally towards the unification of certain African economies.
So I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop you there,
Yeah.
and let's go over that a little slower. Let's do that one slower.
What's that?
Kiswahili.
Oh, okay.
Before we do that, I wanna say what's up to Scribe Sanjeti Akimaat. He teaches the mental nature. I'm gonna put him right here. He teaches the mental nature, and we have
Peace,
Imo
peace.
Odo. Yes, between these two brothers right here, this all you need is these two. Well, not all, I mean, I'm sure other people do what they do, but I'm saying you've got a master teacher of Africology and African American history as a guest tonight. You also have a master teacher in the Mandu Netcher, Scribe Sanjeti. I'm sure you guys know him. He was initiated in the Temple of Anu. Okay, so it's important to know who your people are, who you can reach out to, and who you can learn from, and you can make also donations because these brothers ain't learned this for free. They spend a whole lot of time and money. So if you can buy, what I'm saying, Gucci and Louis and Starbucks, you definitely can hook a brother up. Okay. So I just wanted to say that part. But these two and these two brothers here have a bevy of knowledge that can definitely help in learning what we need to learn in order to work towards our goal of unification. Okay. So I don't know where emo went. I hope he comes back though, because we were about to just get up into this next question and also talk about Kiswahili and its importance. So I am going to go to, so we had Jason Holmes who is a initiated member of the Shrine of Ma'at. Based on your experience in Senegal, what seems to be the dominant spiritual tradition there? So when we have email, when he returns, I will add him. Let me see. 1 second. Just give me 1 second.
Can you hear me? Uh, my sound's not on. Can you hear me? Let me see. I'm trying to get sound. I can't hear.
Uh, oh, I had my mic on mute the whole time, you guys.
There you
Sorry.
go. There you go. Now I can hear you.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
there was
put
like
in the chat if you can
like
hear us both.
can you hear
If you
me?
can, I can hear you, Emo.
I was gonna say
Okay.
they, they
They can hear both of us. Both of us can be heard.
who's the other person?
Me,
Okay.
you and
All right.
me.
Sorry.
I was about to text Anjetti, be like, you up, get ready, but you good. So here we had a really good question. Yeah, I tagged it. Are you frozen? Because your facial expression has not changed for the past 5 seconds. Oh, he's coming back. Come on back. This is a really good question that I would like for us to discuss. 1 second, 1 second. Okay,
All right. Yeah,
you back?
my internet in my house is crazy. I'm trying to.
That's okay. We know you have your brownout and the internet is a little janky right now. That's fine. So we're just gonna jump into this question. Hopefully you won't get disconnected anymore. Jason Holmes asked this question. I think it's a really important question. Based on your experience in Senegal, what seems to be the dominant spiritual tradition there?
Um, I actually was asking around for those kinds of questions, and we actually the dom. Let me just put it this way: Senegal is a very, very Islamic country.
Okay.
So one thing I noticed, um, because I don't speak Wolof, but I do know that they have names that they refer to their ancestors to in Wolof. So there was names of deities that I'm just not aware of. I just don't know. I don't speak the language. So I know when we went to a couple ceremonies where they actually invited the ancestors and they were dancing, and quite honestly, I didn't see a difference between what I know of voodoo and what I know of Ifa and what I know of um I guess the Akan tradition, like from what I've seen, I didn't see a difference. So I don't know the name. I can tell you a name, and I don't think that I also don't think it's always very constructive to try to say that our way our spirit our way our cosmic view, let's call
Mm-hmm.
it, or our sorry, my door was open, but
Yeah.
our what do you call it? Our spirituality, our spiritual traditions. I don't necessarily think that they need to have a name, because um, it's not about, it's about the way of life. That's
Right.
to me, that's the
That's
big.
right.
So the way of life is the biggest part. You participating in harmony with your community, you know, is the biggest part of the culture. So that, I think a lot of the time people get caught up on names, because this people do this when you start talking about capitalism and communism. Like, oh, if we can't have capitalism, if we can't have communism, which one can we have? What alternative do you have? If you're not going to be a democracy or a republic, what are you going to be? And I think when we actually get our hands on uh something that demonstrates what our ancestors were about and what they did, and it's clear, I think the words will come to us to express exactly what it is that must be done. And I
Okay.
think and I think we do that. I think the champions of our people that I believe acted in harmony with their African spirit. I think those people, they knew what was expected of them by their people in the moment that it was necessary. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are roles, leadership roles, societal roles, institutional roles, occupations maybe, that are more clearly defined. But I don't necessarily think that spirituality, as a term, spirituality is not very defined. I think religion
Right.
can be kind of rigid and orthodox.
And dogmatic, oppressive.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily, but I think there is something to um the idea of institutional structure with spirituality. Now, I think that there's a reason that our ancestors had temples. I think they have different functions than churches and mosques and synagogues. But like I said, I think we need to. I'm not gonna sit here like I have the corner on on our African story and everything that we need to be doing and what we need to know. I'm not gonna pretend to have the corner on how to explain these things that I feel like I understand from my research. But I do think that it's important for us to become engaged and for us to have more ongoing and continuous contact with traditions and customs that we've lost contact with as a result
Mm-hmm.
of what's going on here in the United States in terms of racism and repression and the oppression of our people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for us to establish a relationship and maintain and and foster a relationship with African culture in the living tradition, but also restoring our memories of our African selves. But
Mm-hmm.
I also think that understanding our relationship to our African ancestors will restore our value system in terms of
Mm-hmm.
us seeing ourselves as sacred and worthy
That's
of,
right.
of living the full life and potential that we're here to live out and fulfill. So it's for us to figure that out.
So I want to just give you guys a summary of how this discussion leads to something functional and practical. Um, it's is that me? Can you mute yourself? Because I hear there's some feedback. I don't. So okay, good. I don't have any feedback. Okay, so first off, you know, our spirituality. He mentioned different types. Doesn't necessarily look different, right? There's the veneration of the ancestors, there's the recognition and paying homage to the forces of nature. We see that in all iterations of African spiritual practices because at its core, it's African. So, one way that we have this connection to Kemet, we have this connection to an ancient African civilization, is learn about African spiritual practices and become a practitioner, because how we view the world and how we viewed, and I'm going to use this term intentionally, how we viewed God is an indication of how we structured our societies and how we structured our social interactions, not just with each other, but with ourselves and with nature. So we knew how to treat something in a sacred manner because we were connected to the divine in order to do that. So learn about African traditional religions and spiritualities, and that's ATR is a blanket term. It's not necessarily a dogmatic religion like an Abrahamic religion. Okay, get in touch, like learn something and practice a spirituality that resonates with you. That's the first thing. The second thing is we talked about ancient languages. The culture is embedded in the language, it's embedded in the words, it's embedded in the structure, it's embedded. All right. And you have that history of ancient African culture embedded in the words, the intonation, the languages. Like I have thought forever, there's got to be something African about this, because how many times do Black girls talk like this? I know I do. I know I do. You just be like, whatever. Like you see Black girls doing that. Where did that come from? That you got an answer for that? I see you taking your thing off mute. You got an answer for that one?
I mean, I think there are certain gestures that are definitely like they definitely demonstrate characteristics that are consistent with African culture. But I think there's also um certain attitudes and behaviors that are responses to the environments that we find ourselves in. So
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
so like there's I don't like to say that everything that we do today is the same as what our African ancestors did, you know, uh when we were in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
before the Ma'afa, cuz I think there's continuity, but I also think that there's fragmentation. There's also have been there's been suppression and repression of African culture. So there are some things that have been abbreviated, and then there's other things that have been retained and continue to flourish and be pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, do black women roll their neck a little more than the next culture? I mean,
Absolutely.
I think so. I think that's fair to say.
And so I think also with what you touched on, there's continuity. It's not exactly the same because we're responding to the environment that we're in now. That's just like when our ancestors, because they were responding to new conditions in a new environment, created syncretic religions, Santeria, Lukumi, etc. And so we still do that because again, language is an expression of culture. We have our continuity, there are fragments, but it's still a reflection of our condition, and we are the ones we're still African at our core. So our responses are going to have
Yeah,
touches and nuances of African culture.
yeah. So, and this is the whole thing with being African centered, because like a lot of the time when we're talking about being centered, you're coming from Africa. You're not you're
Hmm.
not you're not looking to Africa. Does that make sense? So a lot of the time, you have people who see Africa as a focal point of their ideology, but they're actually superimposing something from Europe onto Africa. You see, so what happens is people will have a Eurocentric ideology, and they'll basically take something that's very, very, very European, and then they'll say, well, this has been in Africa for a long time, so this is African.
Like
And I
white
think,
South Africans talk about something they African.
yeah, Yeah,
But you ain't gonna never be African.
I mean, people do this. People do this with all kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want to name any examples and lose fans, you know. But it's one of those kinds of things. It's like a lot of the time. That's why I said chronology is. That's if anything we leave today, chronology is the most important aspect of African history. Chronology is ma'at. Chronology is
Why? Why is chronology my aunt?
because it's order. To,
Hmm.
to to put things in order is to put things in harmony with one another. So our story is supposed to create harmony for us. It's supposed to understand where the disruption was and restore our memory.
Hmm.
So when we restore our memory, we restore ma'at
Hmm.
to ourselves. We restore ma'at to the universe, to our universe, even if it's our personal universe. When you learn the truth, when you learn the complete truth, the whole context, the holistic truth, when you learn everything and put all the pieces together, that's called the restoration of ma'at. That's called putting it all back together. So
Hmm.
that's the most important function of our story. That's the moral. That's why when we say something is holy, we're saying it's complete. We're saying it's all together. It's sacred. Therefore, it's holy. It's whole. So that's what we want. We want to see ourselves as sacred beings. We want to be whole again. You see, so that's what we're trying to do. That's the end goal of
That's the
telling
end goal,
an
is to
African
be
story.
whole again.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So I want to thank you for being on tonight. I have Sinette Cheryl said we be feeling the vibrations and frequency more, so our body moves with our words. So and that's very African,
Yeah.
right? And that's very African. We had Saint Curtis to remember. Yes, absolutely. In 360 to returning back to our original place. Larry Yala, I'm not sure what this means. Love dash dollar sign Buck Bay Yala. Don't know what that means. Okay. So I want to thank Imo Odo for being on here tonight. You will be seeing him again. We have a series that we're going to be rolling out over this season of Tuesday Talk. And we will continue until the second or third week in June. I have to check and see, not the two of us, Tuesday Talk, just so that I'm clear on that. Okay. So thank you for joining. Tuesday Talk will be on at nine as opposed to eight, like it has been the past couple of seasons. If there's a topic that you'd like to be discussed or a person you'd like to have on, you can send me a DM to Yoga Girl Psy on Facebook. You can DM me there. You can DM Yoga Girl Psy on Instagram, but I'd prefer you DM Yoga Girl Psy on Facebook. It's just easier for me to do it there. Okay. So to kind of recap, we need to get back to our source. We have the Medu Neture to learn. It's such a beautiful language to learn. To learn, what's embedded, all right, in the language, in all of the glyphs. So in the way that the sentences are constructed, that they're balanced and they're beautiful, like everything about it is
Yeah.
something that really centers you. The second language that we discussed tonight was Kiswahili. It's pretty much agreed upon for us to have our unity. We need to learn Kiswahili. Okay. So let me find somebody who can teach it and bring them on Tuesday Talk. That's totally what popped in my head. I'm like, I gotta find somebody. I'm gonna ask Sanjeti. Don't tell him. He's probably still watching.
Find somebody who knows about South Africa, because Julius Malema, he was talking about using Kiswahili and giving resources to that language, because there are people in neighboring countries that already speak it. So to them, they want to give resources to the language so that they can kind of break down the barriers between their economies. You know,
Mm.
yeah,
We'll talk offline. I want to hear what you said again. I love Julius Malema. And
yeah.
what was the other one? We talked about the miniature Kiswahili, and there was another point that we had mentioned. Oh, when we talked about Senegal, the Kemet movement, and having this understanding that they're, as African people being the first people on the planet, there's no need for the concepts of Pan Africanism because it's just you. That is the result of our disbursement,
Yeah,
and,
they
and,
put
and
on.
us recognizing where we are in the world, and wanting to unify. Okay. So the Kemet movement in a nutshell is so we can understand that it's like the Black movement, the diasporan and continental, the all of us movement.
Look,
Okay.
before there was Pan Africanism, there was
Hmm.
and the essence of
Right.
Pan Africanism exists in the very concept of Kemet in every African nation that came thereafter.
Say that one
So
more time and say it slow.
the essence of Pan Africanism
Mhm.
came about when Kemet came to be, when Kemet formed, when all those different groups of Africans came together in the Nile to form Kemet. That was an expression of Pan Africanism. And every nation that African people have created since has been a Pan African nation.
Mhm.
So there's no difference between Pan Africanism and nationalism or nationhood. So I think we need to understand that when people are reflecting on their history, ideology matters.
Mhm.
The ideology you have today, you will project 5,000 years into the past. So a lot of the time, people who have black nationalist politics, they didn't begin with black nationalist politics. They studied African nations and came out with black nationalist politics. And then they
Mm.
started to study other African nations. People who don't have black nationalist politics tend to study African nations from the perspective of other nations. So they or non-African nations. So they tend to have Western perspectives or Asiatic perspectives on African affairs. So the idea of centricity is important for us to really understand ourselves on our own terms. Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it there. It's important for us to understand ourselves on our own terms, on our own terms. And so many people are thankful to you for a powerful conversation, a wonderful conversation. Garrick Fan gave me a little title I haven't quite earned yet in Tepi. That's not me yet. But
Hey,
thank you
hey,
for the confidence.
live up to it. Live in it.
I will be doing that. Yes, yes, yes. So thank you so much for coming on this evening. And guys, Tuesday Talk is back, 9 o'clock, right here. You know where to find us. Please share and spread this video. And I will see you next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Shema Ma'at.
Peace. Peace.
Peace.